But this week it has turned into a time of me hopping on Substack Live and just kind of rambling through what I'm working on, how I can continue to, get shit done, even though I'm literally spending a lot of time in my car right now because I'm the driver. So playing mom taxi is super fun. I am on my way to get baby girl from before school. She is, I call her baby girl because she's my baby girl. Free choicing and brain power and likes and dislikes, and I absolutely love watching her continue to grow and form opinions, whether or not I agree with those opinions. Although, because of how our family we talk everything out, and it's not a matter of like, oh, I need your permission. It's a matter of, I need you to help me make sure that if there is something I have not thought of in my brainstorming, that you're going to poke holes in it. And sometimes that can translate into some very loud and animated conversations in the current debating sphere. I think it is artificial intelligence is the hot button conversation we have in the house right now on my husband is very much on the end of just pull the plug. No one needs that much information, that much automation, or and I'm not fully remembering all of the, we'll go with talking points on the AI is evil side, where I lean on to the side of AI can be, but again, it's a tool. And this idea of tools and what what different technologies are used for is not a new issue. And I say that bringing it into, I do work with Moms Demand Action. I am the Virginia State Suicide Prevention Lead, and with that, the understanding how laws are written around guns. And I've lived in the policy world of how do we craft policy to make it where you are protecting humans and yet you are also protecting their right to be stupid. And that is where a lot of the anti-gun or pro-gun back and forth can happen. And I say that as I talk about artificial intelligence because it's a very real issue of at what point do we automate the killing process? And that is terrifying. And I understand that that is terrifying because talking about life and death means that there is a loss. And if you do not know or understand or have an ability to deal with loss in a healthy manner, so that way you understand it, that's where a lot of different traumas arise. And loss can be the loss of a job, the loss of a loved one, the loss of an old self. All of it kind of echoes through the chamber as you ask those ethical questions of what should be allowed. And it is so, I don't know. I'm unsure if it's a fear or a feeling of being in control that drives the pro-gun narrative forward. But on the end, I don't like the pro-gun and anti-gun, or gun control, because all of those things, it's not really what it's about. What it is how do we define terms in a manner that accounts for the freedom of individuals to hold and carry weapons as a whole, and that's, artificial intelligence. You've got weaponization there. But we weaponize narratives, and we weaponize legal systems, and we weaponize each other against each other all the time. That when you then put something in the hand of an individual that creates the ability to remove another's freedom to exist, from a distance. And, this summer we're doing this summer camp, and it's all like, hey, we're going back to the 80s, and remembering what it's like to just be a kid and get dirty and scrape knees and hopefully not break arms as I roller skate, all of those various elements of summer camp are coming into play. But we're also going to talk about the various tools that exist and how they are used to remove the rights of existence from others, and how they're used to remove the right to speak you know, but also the right to remain silent. And trying to navigate that area of, if I have a right to be silent, is there ever a mandatory reporting? Are those mandatory reporting individuals, like, how does that look and how does that play out? And today, when we record the afternoon Ask Mom, we're going to be talking about the data footprint. So yesterday on the podcast, we talked about parallel systems and the multiverse and how we have all of these systems all over the place all the time, working, some against each other and some they are working together and trying to determine the who, what, where, when, why of system, the sovereignty of the geographical locations. What about what's underneath the surface area of a geographical location? What about what is above? We kind of talked, and we didn't go into big details, but we kind of started that conversation. Well, today we're going to talk about sailing the data sea, and that is completely, I started, I was supposed to be out at B-Sides, Delaware last year, and it just didn't work out because so much was just happening all at once. And when that happened, I ended up doing a virtual CTF and talking about different things, but I also put together this whole piratey theme talk about data. So you understand where the data comes from, the ethical elements of that data, who has access to the data, who is able to put all of the pieces together of the data, and that is where we're going to pick up today. And it's going to be super fun because we're also going to talk more about, and we haven't talked about it too much, but we're going to talk about Epstein and the Epstein files. And with the Epstein files, like, in the recording I did yesterday, I put a couple of questions that I've been mulling over, really about, like, what is the mindset and brain processes of the current U.S. administration, how, like, then it moves into questions about intelligence operations and how they function, because there are clear and concise rules for what you can and cannot do when it comes to intelligence information. But at the same time, it is also a matter of all's fair in love and war. Like, so how do we ask those questions about the data to ensure the ethicality of our sources? And at what point do we actually have a right to intervene versus not, and just be the observer in the situation? Hi, Sarah. I'm so excited you're here. I'm just, driving to work, or not to work, to pick up baby girl from work. There we go. And traffic is slow and, so we're sitting in traffic. Talking about data and how data, it's attached to a human element. And why I say a human element is someone somewhere at some point in time felt that that piece of data was important enough to write it down. And because someone somewhere at some point in time felt that it was important to write down that particular piece of information, it then started to grow these large data footprints. And the question is, who has a right to what data? If the data is about me, but I am unaware of its existence, is that my data, or is it because an observer saw something I did and felt it was important enough to write down? There we go. Gotta love alarms. And in my life, I have been the observer, sitting there, watching, trying to figure out and understand how best to help a society with the information, and that's where it all comes down to like ethical contracts and informed consent. However, who is allowed to give consent on behalf of someone else? So with the American system and how information moves and how information is leveraged, I'm trying to think of how best to ask the question. But what does governance, or what governance exists to kind of maintain those boundaries? And in what instances is it ethical to cross boundaries, or is it never ethical to cross boundaries? And you would think that it's easy to say, oh, it's never okay to cross a boundary that, has been put into place. But at the same point, if, I'll use my daughter as the example because she's always my example and she knows it and she's okay with it. And she has consented to me using her as my example. But when she was little, I want to say it was like 3. We were packing up our apartment, getting ready to move locations. And we just needed her to sit still for a little bit. And, being the Marine parents that we were watching Jurassic Park with my 3-year-old. To this day, it's still her favorite movie, by the way. But we were watching Jurassic Park, and the scene where the Tyrannosaurus Rex eats the lawyer off the toilet. She was being particularly like excitable, high energy. That is one of the things that I love. Right now she's working before and after school care at the public schools, and she talks about her high energy kids, and I love that she's deemed them her high energy kids because that was her. And she knows that if she comes home and she's like, oh my gosh, these kids were so obnoxious and annoying, we would make fun of her. Just, in teasing and in a loving environment. At the same point, we help to, grow that tough skin so that way, and we've talked to our kids through this about how my goal as a parent is to prepare you for whatever you could possibly experience when you step outside of the confined security of the home that we have built as a family together. And so we're watching Jurassic Park, eating the lawyer. I looked at her and go, do you know why he got eaten by that dinosaur? And she's like, no. I'm like, he didn't do what he was told. He was told to stay put. And he didn't, so a dinosaur ate him. So for the longest time, she's like, I got to do what I'm told, otherwise a dinosaur's going to come out and eat me. And, we all scar our children in different ways. I have informed her that, I broke it, I bought it. If she ever needs therapy because of the unpacking the traumas that her Marine Corps parents have caused, let me know. We will find you the best care. But it's that element of, I kind of got off on a tangent, and that's the fun of ADHD and my incoherent ramblings, is the fact that I just kind of ramble and work through ideas in my head, and some of them are golden gems, and others are just hilarious stories about how I traumatized my daughter, telling her that dinosaurs were going to eat her if she didn't do what she was told. Because, fear's how, we were taught to control children, is make them scared, which, you live and you learn and realize that that's not the healthy way of doing it. And then that takes the whole step of having to peel back the layers and understand the various traumas and triggers of your own life and how they're being passed on to the next generation of fucked up human beings, because we're all just kids trying to figure out how to live in a world where, for some reason, it seems like the adults have death wishes. And I say adults lightly. Use that term lightly. There we go. Anyways, I forget where I was going with all that. So I hope you enjoyed it. I hate traffic. We were talking about data, and that's kind of where all of that had originally led from, into dinosaurs and whatnot. But unfortunately, when it comes to consent and who is allowed to provide consent for whom, the parental rights issues become a very large issue to navigate. And that is where the do I have a right to intervene? And at what point do I have a right to intervene? Especially when it comes to cultural norms that I may or may not understand. And how do we just do better as we gather data in an effort to help learn more about the universe and everything around us, to allow for exploration and understanding to grow and bloom without forcing your own thoughts and opinions on other individuals. So, well, this is fun, and I think I've kind of gotten lost trying to get to this school that my daughter's at. She's a substitute, so she goes all around the county to all different schools, and yes, haha, I knew what I was doing. I'm sure she's going to call me like anytime now. So I will leave my random ramblings. Oh, look, there she is. And be back later.